Coach Tom, here to regale you with tales of the hex bar, or trap bar if you prefer. But I like to call it a hex bar because it does way more than just train your traps, and therefore trap bar is a bit misleading.
It is a hex bar. It is not a trap bar.
But yes, it trains way more than just your traps. As a matter of fact, it trains the majority of your body, but especially your back and your legs. But that is, of course, when doing a hex bar deadlift, which is usually what people will use a hex bar for, is to do some variation of a deadlift. Now, why I wanted to devote a video to this piece is because I feel like it's kind of a misunderstood beast. It gets a lot of love from some people and a lot of hate from others.
This useless piece of junk is a trap bar.
So before I go on, I want to say up front, I love the hex bar. And with that, since this video is going to be largely positive towards the hex bar, I think it'd be important to mention why it tends to get hate. And that is because it is seen as an inferior alternative to a traditional deadlift. And that's where I think a lot of the issues lie, is that it's seen as an alternative to your traditional deadlift, which it definitely can be, but we live in a beautiful world where we don't have to just choose one or the other. We can do a traditional straight bar deadlift and we can do a hex bar deadlift, which is what I encourage. And that's sort of my message to those who may throw a lot of love at the hex bar is I don't think anybody should rely on the hex bar unless you are that special case who has had chronic ongoing back pain. So what really makes the hex bar different than your traditional deadlifts? Well, first of all, look at this frickin' thing. It looks nothing like a straight bar, and that is because it is in fact a hexagon that I am standing in the middle of, as opposed to that straight bar where it's gonna be, you know, in front of you. You're gonna be behind it, it's gonna be in front of you, and that means you're gonna be pulling from one place, whereas here, it's surrounding you. Resistance is surrounding you as opposed to, again, being all in front. That's a very important first point to make because due to the nature of pulling resistance solely from the front of our bodies, it's gonna put a bit more stress on our lower back, which is not inherently bad, but it's still a consideration. The other thing is we have these neutral handles here, whereas with a straight bar, we're forced into that pronated grip, which can be a bit harder on some people's wrists and shoulders when compared to the neutral grip here. Again, that's not inherently bad, but it's still a point worth making. Now, as a trainer, I am somebody who likes to encourage, challenging those uncomfortable movements and uncomfortable large ranges of motion. That being said, there's still a lot of value in a hex bar. Due to everything I just mentioned, it is a lot more accessible, easy to learn and easy to load. But that doesn't mean it's just good for beginners. I would say that the hex bar is great for anybody and everybody at any point in their fitness career. And that means young, old, athlete, general fitness, whatever, doesn't matter. But again, a point I'm gonna keep coming back to is no matter how much love I throw at this thing, I don't think it's something that most people should solely be relying on. So another cool thing about the hex bar is when compared to a traditional deadlift, we're gonna get a lot of posterior chain engagement, which is awesome, love that. Posterior chain, of course, meaning backside of our body primarily. And we still do get that with a hex bar deadlift. But because of the nature of things, we're gonna bring in a bit more of the quadriceps. And that means we can be a bit more squatty with our hex bar. But that's also gonna depend a little bit on how you're positioning yourself. So if you're really hinging over the hex bar here, it's gonna be a bit closer to your traditional deadlift. Not the same, but very similar. But you can also be a bit more upright and make it more like a squat. And of course, you can also really keep those legs straight, become a table, and do more straight leg work and be very hingy. But even then, we're still gonna be placing less stress on our lower back than we would with the straight bar. And as I said before too, it's a bit easier to load a hex bar compared to a straight bar. That means you can load your body with more weight. I don't care how strong you are on a traditional deadlift, you will almost certainly be stronger on a hex bar. For example, I think the most weight I ever pulled on a hex bar was 500 pounds for 11 reps, I think. And I can assure you, I cannot do that on a traditional deadlift, at least yet. And this again is largely because of the fact that we're not pulling resistance strictly from in front of our body. It's all around us, We have a bit more help from our quads, and again, that allows us to load our body a bit more. And at the end of the day, your body doesn't care that much what exercises you're doing as long as you're properly loading the muscle. Which is not to imply, again, that the traditional deadlift and hex bar deadlift do the exact same things, but let's not get hung up on that, all right? That's not the point. A couple other things worth mentioning is our handles. So I already touched on the fact that we have the neutral grip. We also, with most hex bars, are gonna have the option between a higher handle here, so less range of motion, or if you want a bit more of a challenge, you can flip this sucker over, and now you have more range of motion to work with. Woohoo! And of course, you can always stand on boxes or plates to make your deficit even greater, add more range of motion even still. And this is sort of a bonus, but we're primarily talking about deadlifts here. But you can also use a hex bar for rows, or even, if you want to get real crazy, you can throw this sucker over your head and do an overhead press. Anyway, a point that often gets overlooked too about the hex bar is that no, it's not the same as your traditional deadlifts, which I've said too many times in this video, I'm sure, but it can still be a fantastic complement to your traditional deadlifts. So let's say you're really stalling on a conventional deadlift. You can then perhaps pump the brakes on the conventional and switch to a hex bar for a bit, and then come back to that conventional down the line. And you may notice some new gains on that conventional deadlift. But don't just take my word for it. Let's hear what the other coaches here at Success have to say about the old hex bar.
I think it's a valuable piece of equipment. I think any piece of equipment has its value for the most part. Sports athletes, like a football player or something, like great. Because with the way that you're able to sit in the center of the weight and kind of have it specific here, not only does it allow you to just maximize how much weight you can lift, which potentially could lead to, overall increases in strength. And I guess it's general strength component on how it like hits all parts of the body. It's not super specific to like hamstrings or quads or anything else. It's great in that context. And then also it's the only bar that you could actually like safely take and do, say, like explosive movements like that.
So I think the hex bar is a really good tool for, people who can't quite get the right positioning or don't have a strong enough core to really keep the back safe on a regular deadlift. So if you think about like the straight bar, obviously it's sitting out in front of the legs, whereas the hex bar, you can kind of reach back more towards the midline of your body, which tends to be easier on the back for a lot of people who struggle with correctly bracing the core.
I love it. I'm a huge fan of it, especially for like novices or people that have like no idea how to do a deadlift. I think it's a great tool for initial strength building, especially for like those ones that are wanting to do like kind of dive into the deadlift world. Another thing is it's not necessarily just for the deadlift portion. I like to have my clients do like farmer carries. Like farmer carries are great, but also if you have an athlete, you can really load it up and do like plyometrics with it. You can use it various ways, and it's very effective.
Hopefully I've enlightened you, given you some food for thought as to why this is in fact a great tool to keep in the toolbox. In summary, it's very accessible, easy to learn, not very technical, and very loadable. But also, don't rely too much on the hex bar alone.